Hey guys, welcome back, and here we go with the charge of the Light Brigade. So, if you haven't watched the first two videos, which were on the Prelude and London, this is part of my series, all on my 7 chosen poems from the AQA Power and Conflict anthology to learn quotes for. The rest of them, you don't need to learn any quotes for. The 7 poems that I'm going through, will cover them. I've already done a video laying out what the strategy is. I'll link it up to the top if I remember. But here we go, the Charge of the Light Brigade. This is our first conflict poem from my chosen 7. Why have I chosen it? Because it's got really interesting ideas of honor and bravery. It's really clearly conflict as well, so it will compare nicely with all of the other conflict poems as well. And I chose this as well because there's loads of really good techniques in it. There's lots of content in here to get stuck into. So as always, if you've watched the first 2 videos, I'm going to start with form. By form, we mean techniques that are unique to poetry: rhyme, rhythm, stanza length, caesura, enjambment, etc. What stands out to me about the form in this poem? Well, you've got to choose the anaphora. Now, I'm calling it anaphora as a poem technique, as a piece of form, because in poetry, anaphora is where you've got lines consecutively that start with the same pattern of words. So the first one right there in the middle: there's not to make reply, there's but not to reason why, there's but to do and die. If you're going to learn Charge the Light Brigade, you've got to memorize those 3 lines. I know it might be tough, there's a lot in there, but hopefully it's easy to remember because of that rhyme scheme: reply, why, and die. So we've got a quote here that's doing multiple jobs for us. We can talk about the power of the rhyme, making those words stand out. Think about that last word, die, fitting in here with ideas of suffering, death, and the effects of conflict. So rhyme, brilliant to analyze. Anaphora, brilliant as well, because it helps to add power to the phrasing. There's not to, there's not to, there's but to. And that last line as well, I think, is really important. There's but to do and die. They're talking about the soldiers here. Those cavalrymen that have charged into the valley of death, into the mouth of hell, against all of these cannons, and they've all obviously got absolutely massacred by them. So that last line actually is kind of one of the keys to the whole poem, which is that it is a poem about bravery and the fact that they didn't have any choice. You know, they had to listen to the general that gave the order. Just above that, while we're there, someone had blundered, which is a reference to the general or whoever gave this order, this bizarre, crazy order to charge against these cannons. And you should take a look as well into the context, which is that it's a true story about the Battle of Balaclava in the Crimean War, where literally it was worldwide news because it was just so staggering that these 600 cavalrymen were completely wiped out in this bizarre, ridiculous move. I'm not going to go over the context in any detail in this series, but please just do the research because it's actually really interesting as well. I think it was the first ever public radio broadcast was reporting on this. Don't quote me on that, even though I'm a teacher. So there's my form. I'm done. Because remember, all we're looking for is 2 language, 2 structure, 2 form techniques. So I'm done. The anaphora and the rhyme. Form is done. Don't need to worry about it. So what else should we look for? Well, we need to look for language. We need to look for structure. Language, straight away. Let's look at that top stanza. Valley of death, valley of death. Repetition, you can kind of analyze that as structure because it's repetition of a phrase rather than a word. You can zoom in on death. You can analyze it as a metaphor as well. It's not literally a valley of death, but of course it kind of represents and symbolizes the fact that everyone died, everyone got massacred. So valley of death, definitely one of my quotes. Now I'm going to add into that as well, jaws of death. Because these are 2 metaphors now that are all about, and the repetition of the word death, and they're all about emphasizing this complete massacre and suffering and death the key ideas in the poem. So those metaphors are going to be really useful for you. I would definitely recommend learning those. We've also got lots of really good sibilants, which in this poem is quite good to analyze. And if you're searching for those top grades, the 7s, 8s, 9s, you're going to have some interesting techniques to talk about. And the sibilants fits that really well. Let me say why. Stormed at with shot and shell. Stormed, shot, shell. Shot, what's it talking about? It's talking about the cannon blast, stuff whistling through the air. So shot and shell kind of creates that sound of whistling. So you can link that sensory imagery really, really nicely, that sense of sound, to the battlefield in this poem. So that's the kind of advanced analysis that's going to help you get up into those top levels. So if you're confident with analysing sibilants and confident with linking it to sort of maybe slightly more interpretative ideas in the poem, definitely go with that one. To be honest, guys, that's pretty much all I'm going to really choose for language. Remember, I'm only looking for 2 language, 2 structure and 2 form. I've already got really nice metaphor and I've got the sibilants. I quite like repetition at the end of honour, because that's the kind of core of the poem, which is that the poet wants us to remember these guys forever for the sacrifice that they gave. So you can definitely, if you want a really simple quote that you can just memorize, you just need to memorize the word honor, and it fits really nicely into the idea. So that is language and form done. Let's look at structure, which is, as you can see, in blue. We've got a rhetorical question. Was there a man dismayed? Meaning, was there a man shocked or and concerned? We've also got this rhetorical question, which I prefer. When can their glory fade? It's a bit of a winner because it's got glory in it as well, which links into those key ideas. So as a rhetorical question, what's its effect on the reader? Well, it draws us in, doesn't it? It poses as a question, which we then perhaps go on to answer in our head. So it's a very engaging technique. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with structure is the final line of each stanza. It's actually very similar to exposure, which I'm going to be coming on to in a minute. Because the final line of each stanza sometimes is repeated. Let's look at the top. Rode the 600 is the final line. The next one, rode the 600 again. Next one, rode the 600. So you got repetition of this phrase, and it helps to create that sort of like almost rhythm to it, you know, that repeated sound of the horses charging perhaps. And then it all shifts in stanza 4, not the 600, and this is starting to bring in the idea. This is the shift that many have died and lost their lives. Left of 600, and the last one, noble 600. So think of that difference. Rode the 600 to the final stanza, noble 600. Again, you know, the reason I would probably choose that is because you've got that sense of noble. Again, communicating that idea of bravery and honouring these guys for the charge that they made. So the final line of each stanza is very particular, and it's repeated through the majority, but then shifts at the end to noble 600. Ideas of conflict, death, honour, suffering and sadness. At the bottom, there's a nice little neat summary that a student of mine has written, which I think is really good. I'm not going to read it out, but if you want to pause the video and just give it a read or make notes on it, feel free to do so. But that is it. That is Charge of the Light Brigade. It's actually a really short video, this one, because I think there is lots of options, but really when you look at those options of techniques and quotes that I've mentioned, I don't think you're going to get better than that. So I really think that that's quite a simple one. There's not much to it, which again is why I've chosen it in my top 7. It does the job really, really well of communicating that sense of conflict and the effect of it. So there we go, guys. Charge the Light Brigade. As I said, I'm not going to run through context, but I definitely recommend looking at the context. It's actually very interesting for this poem. Just do some research on that, you know, chat GPT it or Google it or whatever. So yeah, if you've got any questions or comments, feel free to put them down below. If you're a student of mine, thank you so much for watching the video, because I'm sure I told you to. So well done you for doing your homework. If you're not my student, thank you for watching it. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one.